Good afternoon, and I see some people are coming back. Thank you all for hanging in there until the very last session. So this is our closing session. Um, who here has learned a little something about AI as a result of this program? Thank goodness. And thank you again for hanging out with us this afternoon. So as was mentioned, I'm up here with two individuals who are leaders. Sonia, this Chief Technology Officer with the City of Toronto, and Agapi, who is the CEO of CILAR. And what we're going to talk about for the last portion of the day, so we're going to get more into the practical and talk about how the city, so a public institution, and a non-profit, or I guess a social profit organization handles AI and rolls out AI and does that in an inclusive way. So, so what we're going to do is just going to jump through some questions, go back and forth. And you've heard a lot about how AI is transforming the world around us. And of course, that applies to what's happening in the city and as well as in other institutions. So we're going to ask some questions to get an understanding of how both Sonia and Agapi are dealing with AI in their institutions. So starting with the first question, let me find my questions here. So this one is for Sonia. And so we've talked about this morning and all actually throughout the day, and actually with everybody who's been on stage, that Canada, Toronto, we have a lot of knowledge base here around AI, and lots happening in Canada around the development and research of AI. So Sonia, question for you. How is the City of Toronto thinking about AI and its role shaping the public service? And what are the big opportunities that the City of Toronto is leveraging as you're embracing and rolling out AI?
Great, thank you, Mo, and thank you for everybody for staying for this last session. So happy to be here. So the City of Toronto, just to ground ourselves, provides over 600 services to the residents of Toronto, and we've got almost 3 million residents. So if you think about the complexity of the services and the wide reach that we have, there's a ton of opportunity for technology like AI, so other technologies plus AI. And some of those opportunities are grounded in how do we deliver the best service we possibly can, because that is what residents want. Residents want fast, easy, personalized service. And then the second is how do we do that as efficiently as possible? Because we only have so large of a workforce. So how do we really help that workforce really deliver the best service that we possibly can? So that's how we're thinking about it, is how can we integrate AI into solutions that are public facing? Some examples that we are working on for next year, we are working on how to get questions answered very quickly using an AI tool, because it's really difficult to navigate the city. For anybody who's tried to put in a service request or call in and ask a question, it's pretty tough. So that is one real opportunity that we are working on for next year. The second is we have, as everyone knows, like a housing challenge at the city, and the team is really trying to figure out how to accelerate applications, so development applications. Again, very lengthy, complicated process. So we're looking at how we can build an AI-assisted process for someone who wants to put in an application. So those are the real examples we're looking at. But as you can see, they tie into public service delivery, but then how do we really change the way we deliver that service?
Excellent. And just a quick follow-up. In terms of the systems you're using, and we heard a lot, there's so many different systems that are out there, and some are geared towards individual things that are very specific. Is there anything specifically that you're using? What are the platforms that, I know I'm going off script, but just curious in terms of what you're looking at.
For sure, and we have access to a number of different platforms that we already use at the city. So the one thing we're trying to do is stay within the ecosystems we have. So for the public-facing chatbot, we're looking at Salesforce, because we're already using it as our CRM tool. We also have Microsoft Copilot that we're experimenting with. And again, we're a large Microsoft shop, so we're looking to see how those two kind of compare from a usability standpoint. For the development piece, we are going to market because it is a very niche, unique use case. There are examples across other municipalities who have tried it, but we are the largest, so we want to go to market to see what's out there.
Excellent, thank you. And what was mentioned several times throughout the day was procurement's going to be what determines what tool you use and putting what your requirements are. So that's one way of controlling what you get and ensuring that it's going to be what you need and also trustworthy. So, and trust comes up a lot in this conversation.
Can I just add one comment
Sure,
to
absolutely.
the procurement piece? Because I think often when we do procurement, the onus is on us to know exactly what we want. And with AI, we don't know exactly what we want because it's an evolving technology. It depends on the data. It depends on some of the creativity that our providers can bring to the table. So we are trying to figure out how we co-create solutions. We're going to try it with this development, AI-assisted development piece, where we're going to bring at least 3 parties to the table to co-create solutions that we can start to look at. Because it's evolving so quickly and changing. It's there is no built-up solution that we can just buy for that.
Excellent. So turning to you, Agapi. So CILAR is a national platform that brings together leading firms, communities, and government partners to unlock a more prosperous and inclusive Canada. With that in mind, what do you see as the big opportunities for leveraging AI to further the public's interests?
So I'll be 100%. Do I need to? There we go. I think, there we go. I can hear myself now. So full transparency, I think this is the end of week 3 at CILAR. So please do not quote me on any of this like a year from now, But I will share, part of the reason why I wanted to come over to CILAR is I spent most of my career in the workforce development space. And through workforce development, anyone knows that the future of work is not what it once was. It's not what our parents experienced. And I, through that work, had always, if you're preparing young people, and that's the space I was always in, if you're preparing young people for the future of work, you cannot do that without technology, and you cannot do that now without AI. And so the unique opportunity that AI brings is we have an opportunity now to literally, this conference in 6 months would be just as valuable and will be completely new information to all of us. And a year after that, and it's going to forever be evolving. Why is it forever evolving? Because we literally, I think when we talk about systems, especially the last couple of years, we would keep talking about systems. The system's broken, there's sexism, there's racism, there's a million isms, and we're like, oh, well, when we were building this system, we weren't thinking about those people, we were thinking about ourselves and who was in power at that time. But at a global level right now, we are literally building a system. AI is going to change the way that we do everything. It's going to change the way that we learn, the way that we access healthcare, the way that we connect with each other, the way that we make money, who's able to have access to the knowledge for upward mobility versus who isn't. We're literally reshaping a system globally. And we have an opportunity for us to be able to do that with equity and with everyone in mind. And the thing that really attracted me to CILAR is there's no one really playing an ecosystem, for the lack of a better term, controller, to be okay, corporations, are you thinking about these folks? Government, hey, are you thinking about corporations and are you thinking about community? How can philanthropy, government, corporations, and community all be a part of reshaping these systems? Because the way that we access basic social services is going to change. We're going to become much more efficient. And also, power isn't going to only lie at a Fortune 500 company. It's actually going to be our ability to change something that we don't see. Part of the issue with all of the isms in this world is that the folks who have been excluded, the folks who are kind of on the sidelines, have no actual power to change the situation, right? That's the essence of racism, right? Is okay, well, I don't have the power to necessarily change what's happening because I historically haven't had power. But now we literally have the power to make change to a situation that we would like change to happen, right? We can create a tool, we have access to those things. So I think that it's going to change every aspect of our lives. And I think that CILAR is really here to ensure that as we recode this system of ours and our society, the way of living, to ensure that everyone is included in that conversation and that groups who were historically not thought of, we have an opportunity within our generation to rethink it and include everyone in the conversation, from development to implementation to learning to access, all of it. And I think that's really the unique opportunity that's in front of us.
Excellent. And you mentioned inclusion and including those that are going to be, I guess, impacted or using the systems. And part of what we want to talk about, and actually being included and being a part of it builds that trust. So I think that's fantastic that once you kind of understand what is being used and what is being produced or what is being put out there, you have a better understanding of it and trust in it. So a bit of a follow-up, how are you plan on either engaging the public or engaging your stakeholders as you move forward with implementing AI in what you do?
Yeah, I think the heart of what makes CILAR unique is that we sit in the middle of all of these stakeholders, right? So we have, HP and Google and Meta and all of these big corporations that, to be quite honest, are also figuring it out as they go along too, right? We have these partners who are here on one end, but then we also I love the elevator with Carney question, because I'm like, yeah, like let's get some regulation here, like let's all be on one accord. So again, we have the opportunity to engage government and talk about, okay, well, as a society, we're your constituents, we're telling you we don't know what's going on, so that means you got to figure it out, to an extent. So how can we bring corporations, government, philanthropy, because the reality is, in order for technology costs money, that's just what it is, right? And particularly coming from a nonprofit sector, in order for nonprofits to leverage these tools, it's quite costly. And these are not one-time buys. These are subscriptions that need to continue on and on. So philanthropy does play a big role in it, because access to technology does cost money. And so philanthropy needs to be at the table. And then community, who is arguably the most important, because the reality is organizations are made up of people. There's people in corporations, as much as we like to not think that there are humans over there. Corporations are made up of people. So is philanthropy, but more importantly, how are we going to, I always say, if you do the hardest math lessons, math questions first, and in this country, if I'm taking a look at pure statistics, that's Black and Indigenous communities. Unemployment rates are far worse than they are of the national average. If you solve the problems for these two communities, then you will automatically solve the problems for the rest of Canada. And I think sometimes we are like, well, why them and why not us? Well, because this is the hardest math question, right? So let's start with the hardest math question and ensure that we're including those folks. And that also, I know we're in Toronto, but we also need to be thinking about rural communities where access to internet and all of those things are not as accessible as, we are very blessed to, we get mad if it's not moving as fast as we'd like it to, right? And so if we solve the problems for these communities and ensure that they are included, which is what CILAR is really trying to ensure is happening, and make sure that there's a level playing field, because in this new world that we're building, there doesn't have to be a hierarchy of the have and have-nots. There doesn't have to be this huge gap between, there is no middle class. There's just people who are below the poverty line and then folks who are ridiculously rich in the 1%. That doesn't need to be our existence. We can rewrite this. So how do we start to rewrite that? As we bring all of these people into the room to have a conversation with each other. And then the folks who are from community realize that the folks who are in what they might think is an ivory tower actually are made up of people and are trying to figure it out like the rest of us. And CILAR has the opportunity to convene those conversations, to humanize the process, and for all of us to stop pretending like we don't know, like we have it all together lovely, and have an honest conversation to say, well, we're just trying to figure this out, so let's exchange notes and let's get to work and rebuild.
Excellent. Did you want to take a shot at that as well?
For sure, and I loved how you talked about just transparency, right? Like, let's have a transparent and honest conversation. And at the city, we are highly diverse, the most diverse city in the world. More than 50% of our residents speak a different language, have a different background. So it makes diversity, what we do, it has to incorporate diversity. We have to serve the 100%. How we talk to residents, Mo, like you asked, so the city is built on public consultation. We have an open council and committee. People show up, residents show up to advocate for the things that matter to their communities. Our councilors are very good at representing their communities. And built into any of our programming is making sure the people we're serving, it's gonna meet their needs. A great example is our free public Wi-Fi program that was built on understanding that not everybody has access to Wi-Fi or any kind of internet. So what can the city do post-COVID? Like, what can the city do to help serve those communities? And we're now close to 90% coverage of those that did not have access. So and we're continuing to work at it, and we're continuing to partner with Toronto Public Library as well to make sure now literacy is there, and we're really bringing people along. So I think we're doing an okay job. Like, I think there's always more we can do to really understand, but through AI, what's gonna be really valuable is getting underneath some of those community-oriented use cases and making sure we're delivering community programs and community solutions, not a widespread citywide solution, because then we're painting everyone with the same brush. Yeah.
Thank you for those responses. So the next question, and I kind of feel like it's been a roller coaster ride. You're sitting here listening to all these experts talking, and AI is awesome. It's going to be the solution to a lot of things. AI is not that great. So the truth of the matter is, there's definitely benefits to be gained from AI, and there's also things that we need to be aware of. And I think part of doing this kind of session is one of those things where we're engaging the community, we're engaging those who have questions and who want to understand how AI works. So thank you for showing up today. So with that in mind, AI can be good, but AI has its challenges, and there could be issues. What frameworks or practices has the city adopted to ensure responsible AI use, and how do you maintain transparency and accountability to the public?
Yeah, and you said it. So there's two sides of the same coin, which is great use cases, great opportunity, but there are risks that we need to manage. And we also know that AI is evolving, so it changes every day. Like, there's a new solution, a new way of looking at it, and it is built on our data, and our data changes every single day. So the way we've approached it is, we're not going to develop a policy that's going to, stand the test of time. What we really need to do is have a framework and guidelines that can ebb and flow as a technology evolves and our use cases evolve. So earlier this year, we did develop a framework that was based on how we use it, not the tech itself. So it was about educating ourselves on how to watch out for privacy, gaps, how to watch out for security gaps. The fact that we are responsible for the output and the utilization of AI, we are responsible for the data behind it, because it really does need to be centered around the human using it and not about the tool itself. So that's how we've kind of really tried to address it within the city, is through training and education and a framework that makes us accountable for using the tool and making sure that we're being transparent about where it's being used.
So for you, CILAR has got a bit of a national vantage point on the country and how people are using AI. So what do you see as the big challenges and concerns integrating AI into the public life?
Yeah, well, I think we've heard a lot of it today. I think the trust factor is one thing. I think the other piece to it is, how are we ensuring that every community is also a part of the actual configuring, right? Like, from the beginning to the end. And I'll give a very concrete example of this. So, in the past, I was running a program for young people, and we're teaching them how to become insurance underwriters and mortgage underwriters. And so part of that was looking at, again, future of work, what AI tools are these industries adopting, and how can we teach the young people how to use it so that when they enter into the workforce, they have a kind of a cutting edge. Through that process is where it dawned on me that, like, okay, it's not just about teaching people how to do it. It's about teaching people how to use it, but then also teaching people that it's an option to also be the one who is developing it. And I'll tell you why. So when the mortgage underwriter program class, and young people will tell you about yourself when they're ready, you know? So we're teaching this class, and like, of course, they're open to feedback. And so they're like, so they're learning how to do this. And within 30 seconds, you put in a profile of the client that's in front of them, and it swoop approved or not, and like the factors as to why they would be approved or not. And the young people were so appalled. They were like, my guy got denied. Like, but there's so many other things. Like, I talked to him, and like, he has kids and he can't work right now because taking care, like the use case in that scenario, like the case was, there were so many intricate pieces to it, but all it asked for was like the finances and like, you know, the mathematics of it. And the young people were pissed. They were just like, this is not okay. And like, what am I gonna do when I have a client in front of me? And I personally don't believe that they should be denied. Like, I don't know if I can do this, you know? And so that's when it dawned on me. It's like, yeah, tools are great, but again, like the human factor, the story behind it, it's kind of like what someone was saying earlier, like you don't know what a judge is, all the reasons that led somebody to a decision, right? And so that's when it dawned on me that, you know, it's not just about teaching folks how to use a tool. It's also about including people in the decision making around how that tool is developed. Because only because of where these young people are from could they have the empathy that was necessary to say, that's not fair, right? And so if we have people who are developing from the onset and thinking about all of these pieces while they're creating this, then maybe by the time it gets to somebody who's learning it, then it's a bit more fair, right? And we're creating something that we all can ethically stand by and feel good about, and the tools could be useful. But, you know, if I'm being honest, I don't know if those young people are gonna go into work and be like super excited to use this tool. I think they rather do the math themselves. Yeah.
Great answer, and actually a really good example of that kind of human checkpoint that you might need along the way. So with that in mind, and this is for both of you, you've kind of hit that with your example there, but how do you balance innovation, risk management, and accountability as you're building out these AI tools? What would you say for that?
I think co-creation, what you just talked about, really matters. Because to your point, a tool is a tool. And by the way, a tool's been developed by people as well, right? So it's gonna inherit the biases, the risk, everything that humans think about, and we're all biased, and we all have judgment that we apply. So we always have to remember it's been coded by someone and does require co-creation to really get it to where it needs to get to, because you need to get different points of view into the tool, if you will. But really, what we're looking at the city is, you know, traditional projects take 3 to 5 years. You do a set of requirements, you kind of work through it, you implement something. AI just simply doesn't work that way because it requires a lot of testing and understanding. Well, it didn't quite reflect the use case I was thinking about, didn't quite reflect, you know, what the community told us. So we are looking at it in a much more agile fashion and iterative fashion. So we are trying to figure out how we get the human in the room as well as the developer in the room as well as any of our partners to co-create some of these solutions and test them, right? So for the public chatbot that we're really working on, which will help answer and respond to questions around our 600 services, we want to start with our agents, actually, our 311 agents, to really start to use it and figure out, when I'm on the phone with someone and I'm being asked a question, am I actually getting the response that makes sense in that context, in that community, in the way, you know, something is phrased? And we'll iterate on that until we feel like it's good enough, and then we're still going to get it wrong probably, and we'll test it with different communities. And I think that's what it's going to take to really balance, do we have the right response? From a risk standpoint, again, we have a framework. We're going to have to adjust our framework as we work through these solutions, as we learn about the pitfalls of AI, as we learn about the pitfalls of kind of how the technology works. And also, how do we need to train ourselves? Like, a lot of it is about us using judgment on what information we put into the tool. So being careful around the information we're putting in, but also educating ourselves on how it could be used so that we can start to think differently about how we interact with it. Because I actually think one of the dangers around AI is it can be so personable that you might be willing to give up information you wouldn't normally put on social media or put into a search. So again, how do we really make sure that we're testing ourselves on how to properly utilize?
Do you want to take a shot at that, or we can move on?
I think we can move
Move
on
on?
because
Okay. No, fair enough.
you
Yep.
answered that very well.
No, that's good. And actually, I'll jump off the whole privacy concept. And again, Dr. Gessesse talked about the whole issue of trust. And I actually hadn't seen that research. So in Canada, we don't trust AI, which is probably healthy at this point. But with that in mind, and knowing that, we have some challenges potentially rolling out AI. I mean, I can tell you, when I get one of those AI, you call in and I guess it's AI behind it, and you're trying to talk to something that isn't able to answer you, and eventually you're like, give me the human. I want to speak to the person, please. So building that trust and kind of understanding the reaction from the public may not be initially as positive as you want. How are you considering thinking about the challenges around implementing AI? And we've heard, so especially around employment, privacy, as you mentioned, environmental sustainability, but recognizing that you don't at the city necessarily have the ability to impact that necessarily, because you're not the ones running the systems that are being used. But how are you keeping those things in mind? How are you going to implement AI to kind of benefit the public while having those issues considered?
I think the key really is going to be engagement. Even with our workforce at the city, we're not pushing an AI tool. Like, really what we're doing is try to figure out what are some of the day-to-day challenges and understanding those, and where and AI is not going to solve for everything, but where can AI play a role? So in the last summer, we did actually have an employee-led challenge, AI challenge, which we put out there and said, think about your day-to-day issues, think about issues that the public comes to the table with. What tools or what could we do to help really solve those very specific challenges, right? So that's the other key, is don't boil the ocean. What's the specific challenge? And we had learning sessions around AI tools. We had learning sessions about how to use it responsibly. And we had over 50 submissions just from our employees. Again, it wasn't top down. We threw it out to the city. And I think that level of engagement and that level of almost democratic process is what's going to help bring some of those solutions to the table and address some of the challenges that you talked about, right? So are we being thoughtful around how it's going to fit into our workforce? Have we been thoughtful around the considerations, so how much it costs, but also the impact to climate? I think that's where it's going to happen, because we don't have a centralized source of answers. I think we need to solve the answers together. And just around the workforce, I know often I get asked, like, well, what's going to happen to jobs, or what's going to happen around employment? And the reality is, like, we have a younger generation who only works with AI, who only works with technology. So I often reference my 17-year-old nephew who grew up with digital and grew up with AI tools. So he's going to enter the workforce at some point, and we already have some of that generation already. So for them to be really equipped and engaged in the workforce, we need to figure out how to utilize it. And then for our older generation, including myself, how do we stay relevant? And how do we stay relevant in really helping to lead that workforce, who are, quite frankly, the future of how the city is going to be run? So I think the impetus is on us to figure out, like, where it makes sense, and upskill and reskill ourselves, so that we can really lead that next generation.
So, slightly different question for you. Think about Canada within the global AI space. What are the ingredients for inclusive innovation so that everyone benefits from AI as we're offering it?
Yeah. Well, I think number one is exposure. Like, I think people need to know. Okay, I'll use the example of, like, remember when AI first came out and all of the young people were using it for their homework, and then all of the schools freaked out and were like, if you use AI, you're fail. I think that's maybe not the approach, right? I think it's just like, okay, we're going to use it, so now how are we going to rethink how we're now going to grade this rather than banning it, right? So I think oftentimes people, in terms of adopting it to become inclusive, we also, from the onset, created a bit of shame around it, particularly with the generation that is like, well, the thing's gonna give me the answer. Like, why am I gonna waste my time using, you know what I mean? So, which is very logical in my opinion. And so I think we also have to give permission to people to be able to do it, which means organizations need to actually have clear policy around it, right? Like, well, you know, I hear often in organizations, well, or like people are hiding that they used AI. It's like, you gave me this report with AI, like, which is fine. However, like, you need to also provide people with parameters around it. So like, okay, you can use AI, however, like, don't put this in, don't put that in, like, have a privacy, have like rules and regulations around it. And that way, I think it will invite people to, because there is like a very strange kind of like, if you're using AI, you're lazy, rather than if you're using AI, you're extremely efficient, you know? And I think we also have to stop talking about like everyone's job's gonna get stolen. It's like, no, what's going to happen is AI is taking over particular tasks. So your job description may look different because you have more efficient tools and you might be able to take on more, but I think we need to kind of rethink, like demystify those pieces for people and then start to expose them to what is available, right? So these are the trusted AI tools that our organization or our community or whatever is using, and then we need to then be able to train people on how to use it efficiently. I don't know if any of you have if you have an iPhone or a Mac. My life, I had always had one, but my life completely changed when I went to the Apple store to take one of their courses. The things that I had been, the shortcuts that were possible, I was just like, oh my gosh, it's like a whole new world. So I feel like we need to give that whole new world moment for as many people and as many communities as possible, but it requires us to demystify, then get very clear on like what the parameters are, and then start to expose people so that they can learn it and make it accessible, make it free, make it structured, so that I'm not going online and Googling like a million different courses that I can take, or like pop-up ads that are showing up on my Instagram that like after I answer a million questions, they're like, okay, now give me 500 and whatever dollars. Like, all of those things discourage it and then make it seem like this big scam, you know? So I think those are the things that we need to start really thinking about in a very practical way. Like, who are the players who are playing the convening role in this? Because it's required. While everybody else is figuring out how to make the tools great and and people will be left behind if there's not someone who's then taking everyone to each of the stores to say this is what they offer, and you know, having a Mac store experience where you're taking a course and really actually understanding how to use your tools, because you could be using an AI tool at like a 5% usage level, when if you were to just take a simple course, you would be able to be, you know, maximizing your skill set to 90 or 100%. So I think those are the things that we really need to think about from a very practical place. And I think if we all think about that together, then we'll get to where we need to go a bit faster.
I love that example. And so a shameless plug for the library. If you're going online to try to figure out how to do something, come to the library. Yeah. we'll show you the shortcuts. Absolutely. And then the other thing, shaming like someone in the use of AI. And maybe this is oversimplification, but it all of a sudden made me think, and someone earlier today mentioned the calculator. So when you think about, you know, we've had calculators, but you were going to that math class and they're like, nope, you can't use a calculator, you gotta figure this out on your own. And I'm thinking, well, when I step out of the four walls of this room, I can use my calculator, so why am I not allowed to, you know, use my calculator? So I think there's something to be said about educating the public, the end users, on how to use and why. What's the responsible use of it? So yeah, I do need to understand how a math equation works, and sure, I can use a calculator. But oh, are we already at Q&A? Oh my goodness. Okay, so I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to turn it back to our speakers. But I'm going to ask one last question, and this is kind of pull out the crystal ball. And so for each of you, Where do you see Canada, Toronto, and the work that you're doing 5 years from now? Now, you mentioned 6 months from now, it's a different conversation. Another shameless plug, we're doing this next year, November 28th, I think, Abe? Yeah, excellent. So we're coming back to you, and a lot will have changed by then, so you're going to want to come back. But where do you see 5 years from now in your world, in Toronto or across Canada, in terms of AI?
In 5 years?
5 years.
Okay.
Probably too
Well,
long. Yeah.
I have a personal mandate at CILAR. Well, CILAR has a personal mandate to upskill 100,000 Canadians by 2030. So I'm going to tell you, in 3 years, the hope is that we would be able to train 25,000 folks in AI across the country. And I think the way in which that will happen is through collaboration and through, because we're not going to be able to do that on our own. But it will require partners like the Toronto Public Library, our partners like MLSC, et cetera, who are boots on the ground in community, have access to community members, and how we can bring the knowledge of all of our partners to the table so that we can then dispense all of the things that I just said are going to practically be helpful. We can be able to disperse that to the masses. And hopefully I'll be in front of you by 2030 saying we reached our goal, yeah?
Excellent. Over to you, Sonia.
It's a great question. And so at the city, it's, in my capacity, it is about equipping our workforce, and we've got almost 45,000 people. And really, within 5 years, our focus is on the large four, so it's housing, it's recreational services, transportation, and customer experience. And where I imagine ourselves to be is like those workforces will have AI assistants to deliver the best service possible. Because we do in government have a lot of policy, a lot of process, and we're trying to figure out how to get more effective at delivering service. So I think in those capacities, we will have AI-assisted services. So that we can deliver the best and most personalized service. And I really liked kind of what you talked about in terms of equipping our, really educating people. And where we have started this year is we did sanction Microsoft Copilot, and we did sanction Microsoft Chat because it is a very protected environment, and started with learning sessions. Like we did kind of a learning session with our executives in the room at the same time. Bring your laptops in and let's try it out so that we can really learn on how to responsibly use it. So I do think it's going to take that, but I do imagine that within the next 5 years we will have a lot more of that.